This past week, I have been conversing with some of my classmates from Wartburg Theological Seminary about our upcoming class reunion. And during some of those discussions, I thought back to a mere 3 years ago now, about the last time we were all together, which was our graduation day. And I also thought about the verse that we picked out as a class for our graduation verse. Now at Wartburg Theological Seminary, the tradition goes, after everyone has received their diploma, shaken hands, done the whole pomp and circumstance, the organ is played, everyone claps, the class is presented for the last time in full, and the verse is read out loud. Now, we had several options to pick from when thinking of a class verse. And we picked one that we thought was thematically appropriate to being read out in front of a large crowd of people. But there was another verse that we honestly toyed with for a good while about how appropriate it would be for us because of our personality, our reputation, and also all of the struggles that we endured to even get to graduation at that point. So, being a good sport, I'm going to let you all gathered here decide which you think the proper verse should be. So here we go. The first verse that we picked. And now presenting the class of 2023, go out like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, and serve one another with whichever gift you have received. That's 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Thematically appropriate, right? You would read that. You wouldn't feel embarrassed about that. But here was the second verse. It's a little bit different. And now presenting the Wartburg Theological Seminary class of 2023, and Jesus began to weep. There's a little bit of a difference there. And while we did go with the first verse, probably for all the reasons you were starting to laugh, the second verse we thought was also appropriate. Because what had we gone through as a class? Well, we had gone through the loss of a dear friend during our time together as a class, a classmate. We also went through the loss of a professor and another important member of our community. We went through COVID. We went through the after effects of COVID. And it wasn't until our final year we all came back together and we had to ask that question, how do we build a community now? How do we pick up after we lost so much? What is our relationship now? And it's those questions that led me back to today's gospel, which is also where you have heard, and Jesus began to weep. In today's gospel, Jesus receives a message from Mary and Martha that Jesus' good friend, Lazarus, is ill. He is sick. And Mary and Martha are beseeching Jesus to come and heal Lazarus. It should be a simple order, a simple request. However, the disciples that are with Jesus point out that if Jesus goes anywhere near Jerusalem and the region of Judea, he is likely to incur the wrath of the Jews that had only just recently threatened to kill him, but have also run him right out of the country. But Jesus gives an enigmatic response to both of these concerns. The time is not ready for this. An event even greater needs to take place for the glory of God. It's a very standard Jesus non-committal response. It seems like Jesus is trying to put on a stoic and rather brave face. But afterwards, Jesus finally relents. He knows that Lazarus has died, and he sets off, not with great haste, but he still wants to honor the wishes of Mary and Martha. And finally, when he arrives at Mary and Martha's house and he comes to them, he sees the full ramifications of what his decisions have been. Martha, while delighted to see Jesus, is still in grief. And even though Martha continues to profess her faith and her adoration for Christ and his role as the Messiah, there is still that undertone of, my brother is dead. Mary is a little bit less gentle with Jesus. While Mary comes to Jesus and still professes her faith and knows that Jesus is the Messiah, the great teacher, she also point blank says, "My Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." We have probably in our lives lost someone we loved, lost someone we cared about, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, a teacher, a role model, a neighbor. And there is that stage in the grief process where anger does come out. Maybe it's directed at an individual or at a sickness or an illness or whatever it is that we're blaming. But that happens. That's human. And Jesus is fully confronted with that. He recognizes his relationship with Mary has definitely become tested at this point. But even so, Jesus wants to go and see Lazarus. He goes to the tomb. He sees the collection of all the people gathered there, Mary in tears. The Jews that have gone with Mary to comfort her in her grief are also openly weeping. And for the first time, it seems like in today's gospel reading, Jesus cracks. He begins to show emotion. He shows his vulnerability. The Son of God also shows he is the Son of Man. He begins to weep. He recognizes the relationship has become difficult. But it is not broken. The relationship is still there. That love is still there. But there is still also pain. But does that pain get in the way of Christ's love for Lazarus? No. Does that grief get in the way of Jesus' love for Mary and Martha? No. Does that anger, that rage that the Jews may feel towards Jesus get in the way of Jesus' love for them and for the wonderful acts he is about to do on their behalf? No. Because with Jesus' love and God's grace, Jesus commands that Lazarus come out of his tomb, that the dead literally rise. And that relationship, that bond that Jesus has with Lazarus, with Mary, with Martha, with the Jews that are there and witness all of this, becomes remade. It becomes strong again. Because they see that God's love is indeed more powerful than even death itself. Which is huge. Because for the first time, it seems in a long while, God has proven and shown to those gathered that God is still attentive, even in the midst of grief, even in the midst of pain, even in the midst of hardship, and yes, even in the midst of broken and frayed relationships. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave you and I? Think back, if you will, to a strained relationship that you have. Maybe it's with a family member. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe you've wept over it. Maybe you've become angry over it. Maybe you think there's just too much grief, too much baggage, too much just in the way to even try to make amends, or try to work past it, or even try to start over again. But remember this. If there is nothing else you take away from today, remember this. God's love is renewing love. And Christ has shown that that love permeates and penetrates even the tomb, even death. And that while we as human beings are still vulnerable, we're still imperfect, we're still flawed, there is a love that is perfect, that comes from God, that helps us in the midst of our humanness. And there is no shame in that. There is no sin, because that love is all encapsulating. It's that miraculous gift given to us that helps make the impossible possible, both this day and every day. Amen.